Welcome back to the Custom Built and Screwed podcast, everyone. I'm Eric Jensen, your host, and this week we have a few different doozies that I want to dive into. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is this completed home, 1,500 square foot home in West Van that has been ordered to be demolished. I just can't even believe it. The next thing I want to talk about today are bike lanes and some things that are happening in the Netherlands, which, a lot of the bike enthusiasts in Vancouver kind of quote back to the Netherlands and that sort of area. So want to talk about what's going on around the world and how that might impact us here in the Lower Mainland. And then I want to share a story of something that truly you wouldn't believe it happened if I wasn't telling you. It is absolutely mind-blowing to hear this story. So stay tuned. Look forward to that coming up, and let's dive in. All right, so I'm going to try doing this one a little bit different. So I'm going to be kind of referencing another screen here today and see how that looks and how that works for this pod. So we'll see how it plays out at the end. So let's talk about this home in West Van. So somehow, some way, an entire home, secondary home of 1,500 square feet was constructed at the top of a stream bank in West Vancouver. And somehow, some way, nobody said anything or did anything about it until it was finished. So we now have here, I'll show you some pictures. This is from the District of West Van's staff report to council. So I don't want to use any images that might have some copyright to them. I figure if it's available on the District of West Van website, it can't have too much copyright to it. So let's have a look at this. So right here, is this home. And if we scroll down a little bit, you can start to see, the size of it and what's going on here. And this is at the top of a bank, and what looks like to be a pretty steep bank, I would have to say. So I think that's really it for the pictures that are available easily. I found other pictures, but I wasn't sure if they're copyrighted or not. This is a very, very, very nice home in West Van. It's a secondary home, but it's nice. I've seen pictures from other news reports and that sort of thing. I mean, it's a nice home. And so, a little bit of the feedback about it. So for sure, it's 1,500 square feet-ish. For sure, the entire thing was done without any building permits. So, and by building permits, I mean no building permit, no electrical permit, no plumbing permit, none of that stuff. Well, the other thing that's important to note is that it is in a very, very sensitive environmental zone. If I remember correctly, here we go. It is in a wildfire and creek development zone. So as far as even just getting a building permit in the first place, extremely difficult to get a building permit in these areas, especially Creekside. The wildfire just means different details need to be done on the outside of your home, and maybe you're limited to how many windows you can have and that sort of thing. But the Creekside and top of slope, that is major, major no-no. And, it is a safety concern, by the way. Sometimes I think people think, oh, well, government overreach and that sort of thing. And a lot of the time I agree. In this particular case, though, this structure is sitting at the top of a bank. And, all of the trees and ferns and everything else that were up there were obviously cleared to make way for this home on this property. Well, if you've been living on the North Shore for any period of time, you'll know that we have on more than one occasion had a home slide into the valley below. So building structures on the top of steep slopes, this is not something to be done or taken lightly. We really need to be thinking about how we're structuring that home and how we're making sure that home is not going to slide down the hill, which is what over time it's going to want to do, right? So somehow it was only noted in May of 2024 after a public complaint. There were no inspections. So like I said already, no inspections. District staff presented an environmental remediation plan, but as of mid-2025, the owners had made no meaningful progress. So a demolition order was set, and this was, I think, in July. The mayor and council voted to have this thing demolished. So apparently last week, the owners of this property put in a request to have mayor and council reconsider their position on whether or not this home needs to be demolished. The situation, as it's being, explained in the public, is the property owner is saying that the contractor that they'd hired, not Sprucehill, let's be really clear about that, not Sprucehill, but the property owner is saying that they hired a contractor and that the contractor was supposed to be taking care of all the building permits. Well, in the same breath and at the same time, the contractor is saying, well, they took on the project under the understanding that the building owner was going to take care of the building permits. So which is it? Who knows? But at the end of the day, no permits were taken. And so, for me and to me, as somebody who lives and works in this business on a regular basis, I think you as a homeowner can only plead ignorance to a certain extent. And for this structure to be at the place where it is completely finished, like it's a fully livable, very nice, livable home. It is finished. For it to get to that place and to not have received any sort of inspection results and to not have asked your contractor for inspection results, tough to say what did or didn't happen. But again, I'll remind you, as a homeowner, as a property owner, the onus is on you to make sure that you are seeing the building inspections and that they are actually happening. Obviously, you can pay somebody to take care of that work for you. But at the end of the day, you really need to be demanding to see those inspection reports. And if the person you're working with is remiss to show you or give you those inspection reports, no greater that's like a red flag on fire, like skyrocketing across the sky. It doesn't get any worse than that, really. It shouldn't be a big deal to see your inspection reports. We obviously share all of those things with our clients, and yeah, sometimes there's things on there where we have to fix something or whatever else happens. It's not the end of the world. Nothing to hide. You decide what you think about, who may or may not be to blame in this situation. But I'll tell you, for this thing to be fully constructed and for the owner to think that everything was copacetic and having not seen a single inspection report throughout the course of construction defies a little bit of logic there, So apparently Mark Sager suggested that, well, maybe the building can be moved or whatever. It is possible. It's not a terrible idea, but I don't know how easily that structure can be moved, and it will be quite an undertaking to move that structure. And I can promise you, it is highly unlikely there will be a place on that property where that structure can be moved to. All of the municipalities across the board, if you are on a slope side or stream side property, getting a building permit and getting permission to construct anything near the top of bank, not easy. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's definitely not easy. So just be aware of that. If you're thinking about doing work or you're thinking about buying a property, whether or not that property is, in a development permit area, just something to weigh and consider in your decision-making process. Pro tip. This property owner is asking mayor and council to reconsider their decision to demo it. I don't know. I don't know what you think, but I'm going to tell you that why would we make excuses and why would we allow it? If this structure is allowed to be kept, what it signals to the rest of the construction and building community is that, hey, do whatever you want to do and seek to beg forgiveness after the fact. That structure's got to go. All of us reputable builders are doing everything in our power to do things to code or above code, to play by the rules and make sure that we're doing everything to the best of our abilities. If this structure is allowed to stay, that is a major slap in the face to all of the builders and all of the homeowners, by the way, all of the property owners, homeowners that do jump through the hoops and get building permits. It's basically, it signals, hey, permits are optional. So I don't see a world in which this structure gets to stay on the property. That's my take. Love to hear what your take is in the comments below. All right. So topic number 1, done. Topic number 2, bike lanes. So you may or may not know where I stand on this stuff, and I know that this is not gonna necessarily win me a ton of friends here on the North Shore, but truthfully, I see a ton of time and money getting invested into bike lanes across the North Shore, and honestly, I see very few people using them. Very few people using them in the summer, even fewer people using them when it rains, and even fewer people using them when it snows. Well, guess what? It rains in Vancouver a lot. It rains in North Vancouver even more. It just rains here a ton. I feel like all of this time and effort that's being put into bike lanes is for naught. And now what is really interesting is, a lot of people across Vancouver, Lower Mainland, this very vocal minority, they always point back to Europe and to the Netherlands and these other countries where bike lanes and biking is quite prolific. And I mean, that's great. If people want to ride their bikes, like, all the power to them, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, ride your bike, full send. But when we are making our streets less safe to drive on in order to accommodate a bike lane that is rarely used, are we not supposed to be taking care of the majority of the population and doing what is best for the majority of the population? Like, why are we bending ourselves into a pretzel for this very small vocal minority? Right now, where I'm going with this is in the Netherlands, they are considering an e-bike and a scooter ban. So Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, Utrecht, Eindhoven are pushing to ban fat bikes, e-bikes, and electric scooters from bike lanes due to safety reasons. And of course, those safety reasons are, if you get if it's a governed e-bike, your max speed is 30 kilometers an hour. While a lot of pedal bikes going uphill are not going to reach that speed, and even going, flat on flat ground, pedal bike may not hit 30 kilometers an hour, but you power assist it with an e-bike or e-scooter or anything like that, for sure it's going to go 30 kilometers an hour, no problem. So if you've got a bicycle that's going 30 kilometers per hour, and you've got a pedal bicycle that's going 15, well, I mean, it's you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see that there's a safety concern there. Given that the North Shore is inherently hilly and we have terrible weather here a lot of the time, I wonder how much less bike lanes will get used here on the North Shore when our governments decide to ban e-bikes or make e-bikes be licensed or something like that on the roads. And so, I think there's a couple more rocks to turn over on this, in that, you talk to any emergency nurse or doctor, I don't think you're going to find any that are going to be in support of giving our kids an e-bike or an e-scooter to travel around on. There's just too much power, too much responsibility. And, the emergency room doctors and nurses are seeing a ton of hurt kids, hurt people, but a ton of hurt kids that have been riding an electric bicycle or scooter. So, I can see, just from a safety perspective, that's an issue. Now, if a parent is giving their kid an ungoverned e-bike or e-scooter, well, those suckers can now travel 50, 60 kilometers an hour. It's no different than a car or a motorcycle. And where I really take an issue with a lot of this bicycle mania is that none of them have to be licensed and none of them have to be insured. I know of more than one occasion, and it happened within 1 degree of separation of knowledge for me, of an instance where a cyclist ran into a vehicle, damaged that vehicle, but of course they don't have any insurance. And so the vehicle owner now has to pay the deductible to get their vehicle fixed because the cyclist ran into their car. Like, make that make sense. So, I mean, to me, if we're going to continue down this bike path place, I think we need to make sure that the bicycles that are rocking around on the streets, they're licensed, that they have licenses just like our vehicles do, that they have insurance just like our vehicles do. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, you had to go in and do a cyclist test where you had to be able to demonstrate you knew all of the different hand signals for when you're riding on your bike. And you had to hang like a little plate off your saddle. I mean, I'm aging myself, I know. But I do remember having to do that. So somehow, some way, you know, if we're going to put in all of this infrastructure for bike lanes and that sort of thing, should not the people that are using that infrastructure pay for it? You know, the people that drive on our streets, they pay for both the streets and for TransLink through fuel taxes. If we are going to be spending tax dollars on creating bike lanes and maintaining them, right? Like, you've got to send some sort of magical sweeper machine down those things to pick up the rocks and clean them up. You got to have some sort of snowplow to clear those lanes when it snows. Who's paying for that? Where's the money come from to do that stuff? Food for thought, right? My take is that as people government's always slow to respond and react, right? I don't know why, but it seems to be the case. I don't think the proliferation of e-bikes and e-scooters is going to continue at the pace that it's going, because eventually the government's going to wake up and realize that these things need to be licensed. They need to be more carefully monitored. Certainly they need to be, you know, quite a bit more on the ball when it comes to ungoverned vehicles, and, you know, have legislation in place to give the police an ability to deal with those sorts of situations. I'm sorry. Like, if you're on a two-wheeled vehicle and you're clocking around at 50, 60 kilometers an hour, not only can you kill yourself, but you can also kill somebody else. And that's just a fact. I mean, you might not want to hear it and you might not like it, but sorry, like, that's just, that's just the reality of the situation, right? If you're traveling that fast, you can definitely kill somebody, and if not kill, you can surely really seriously hurt somebody. So as these e-bikes potentially get more restricted, you know, especially here on the North Shore, I would see a lot of bike usage decline. I mean, I don't have the statistics and I don't know that they're available, but I mean, based off of my own anecdotal observations, I would say, you know, probably about half of the bikes I see in the bike lanes, when I actually see them in the bike lanes, which is not very often, but when I do see bikes on the streets, you know, I would say roughly half are electric. And obviously you've got the scooters, and, you know, those things. I mean, you can get scooters that just absolutely fly. So again, I really do think that, you know, any of these motorized devices, they need to be treated like any other motorized device, no different than a motorcycle or a car, right? We need licensing and we need insurance for these things. And we also need them to be contributing to the maintenance and creation of the infrastructure as well. I just, as somebody who has to get around the city all the time, bicycle is not practical 99.9% of the time for me. It's just not. I'm here, there, and everywhere. I got to show up to client meetings. Can't show up sweaty and gross. Like, that doesn't work. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, but that's my take on bicycles and where I see things going. And I suspect we have probably seen the peak of bike lanes and bicycle mania. And I suspect as e-bikes become more scrutinized, we will see fewer bicycles on the roads commuting. And again, I just don't on the North Shore, it just doesn't make sense. Hills, rain, snow. I don't know. I don't see it. Tell me I'm wrong. I'd love to hear what you think. All right. So moving on to like the what in the actual F. So we are doing a big renovation in Burnaby. It's called the First Seasons. And so we ordered trusses to be delivered to site last week. I think they were supposed to arrive on Wednesday. Our project manager received a phone call at 10 o'clock letting him know that there might be an issue with the truss delivery. Then at 10:15 received another phone call. The trusses were in the United States. You can't even make this stuff up. Literally, the trusses went from the manufacturing plant on the Lower Mainland here, got accidentally put on the wrong truck, and made their way across the American border into the United States. And then, of course, got hung up in there because they didn't have any paperwork for them to come back across the border. So a whole bunch of hoops had to get jumped through in order to get the trusses back up here. But, you know, I talk about this because, you know, sometimes people are like, well, I don't understand why we're late, why this, why that. And I mean, despite all of our best efforts, and I do mean all of our best efforts, who would ever imagine that trusses would get shipped from the Lower Mainland to the United States and then lose a week of productivity on a project because the trusses aren't there? It's just wild. Moving on to the next thing. The last thing that I want to talk about is I do want to give kudos when kudos is due. And so on a previous video, I talked about some frustrations that we were having getting an IC, a stormwater IC at one of our projects. Within, I think it was 2 business days of our clients paying the bill for this additional storm service IC that they needed, we had the new IC installed. And so to that and for that, I want to say a big thank you, right? I mean, I think it's really easy to chirp and bitch and moan about the municipality and how things go and whatever else. But you know what? I think it's just as important to make sure that we say thank you when something happens the way that you kind of hope it would. You know, the other thing that happened was, you know, an inspection was provisionally passed, which we had not really received a lot of leeway on before. And so, you know, the inspector was like, well, no, you know, do this and take a picture of that, and then we're good. All I can say is thank you. Like, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And this is where I talk about, and I hope that this is a start of a new future where we are collaborating and we're working together as a team, as a unified front to support our clients, right? The people that I work for, they're my clients, and I need to make sure that I take great care of them. No different than, you know, the people that work at City Hall. My clients are also their clients. They're both our clients. And as long as we are both viewing our clients as clients and we collaborate together, magic is going to happen. So I just really wanted to say a big thank you to the folks at the City of North Van for getting that done for us and making it happen. It means a lot, and it really is appreciated. So thank you very much. One last thing I do want to talk about is with all of the smoke that we have in our air this week from whichever fire is going, I can't recall. It's just a gentle reminder that if you put in whole home air purification systems, your home will not smell like smoke and your home will feel and taste healthier. So if you're thinking about replacing your furnace or adding a new air handler or anything like that, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend putting in whole home air purification systems. You know, we have a 4-inch pleated filter at our house. We've got a UV light, and then we've got another positive negative ion thing that's supposed to attract all the dirt and suck it in and really clean the air. So, I mean, the whole idea is that the air inside of our home is insanely clean all the time. So anyways, you know, if you're planning on doing any sort of mechanical system upgrade that involves heating or cooling your home, it's going to cost you an extra $2,000 to $5,000 depending on what you go with. But on days like today, and honestly most days in the city here, right, there's lots of pollutants in the air. Go for that whole home air purification system. You're not going to regret it. All right, that's enough from me for this week. Listen, thanks so much for watching. If you find this content useful, informative, interesting, annoying, whatever the case may be, I'd sure appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our channel and like this video. If there are topics that you'd like to hear me cover or talk about in future podcasts, please drop a comment below and I'll do my best to make sure I address those in future pods. I'm also starting up some YouTube lives, and don't have dates for that as of yet, but know that I'm going to be making myself available to anybody that wants to ask me any questions, probably one night a month, and see where it goes from there. But, I figured sometime in the evening probably makes the most sense so that everybody's at home and not at work. It's kind of like an ask an expert sort of thing. And, I like to give back and I like to share my knowledge with people. And, if you think that would be interesting, definitely subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell. So when I do go live, you get notified that I'm going live, and I will do my best to make sure that we push out some notifications before my next live so that you have a little bit of time to prepare and have some questions that you may or may not want to ask me. So in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Stay awesome and bye for now.